And we're back. You're listening to How to Get Away with Shakespeare with Jane Fox and Gabriel Vega. Starting now. Well, dear listeners, if you hear a noise in the background, it's my dog playing with our toy. We tried to prevent it from happening, but no success. She'll sleep in a while. Bear with us, please. And this is a final podcast
of season 1. Or perhaps forever.
Oh, perhaps forever? Why? You don't want to podcast with me anymore?
Well, you're going to Montreal, aren't you? Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm moving away for a little while because I'm changing, because university is over, and I'm changing gears a little bit and going to see my family for a year and just write a book. We'll still figure out how to do the podcast. We have Skype, we have everything, and Jane has a mic at home, so we'll still do it. Maybe not as frequently as we did during these weeks, because we were on strike and that was the perfect opportunity to do it week by week. But we will do it a podcast for sure.
We will continue.
Hopefully. So, yeah. We're back with part 2 of the season finale. The epic season finale.
See, I was just looking for a way to make it a joke like the war between us will continue for infinity. Infinity War. But I couldn't find a way to get it in, so.
Wow. You just got it in, though.
Always do in the end.
What are we talking about today? Because we talked about... Oh, yeah. We talked about Thor.
We talked about Thor.
We're still going to talk about Thor a little bit today.
Not too much.
But we're going to link it to our main thing, which is Black Panther. That is Ryan Coogler's Black Panther. There's no other Black Panther movie.
Though it has been, like, in various stages of development for, like, 30 years or something.
Yeah.
Like, originally someone wanted to work on it.
But this is the time. This is the year where it came out.
Well, was it last year or this year?
This year.
Okay, yeah.
2018.
What was your experience watching it?
I was going to ask you the same thing, weirdly enough. Yeah, it's a huge event. The reaction is just incredible. I've never seen something quite like it, and I say that in the most honest way, because I've never seen anything quite like it. I was sitting beside me were a couple of black people, and they were insane. I've never seen a community so insane in a theater, in a good way, which like, we're used to that because we're white, and we're used to having superheroes that look like us,
right,
on a movie screen. But it was crazy to see those people react the way they reacted.
I mean, yeah, there was even a thing where someone affiliated with our university who runs like a community youth program took a bunch of the kids to a special screening of the movie. They were all black, and it was like a special thing for them, like being represented on the screen, like, because,
yeah,
I mean, other than that,
even during Avengers Infinity War, when Black Panther showed up, I don't want to give spoilers away because you still should go see it, but it was crazy. When T'Challa came on, they were like, yeah, that's my man, yeah! They were still, it's crazy to see that. I like it.
And the fact that, he's one of the only good superheroes, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was the same experience for me watching Wonder Woman last year.
I liked Wonder Woman.
I watched it with my mom. It was a good film. It was fine. Thor is better. But...
Don't joke.
Thor is better. I actually believe that. But... anyway, she's making faces here. It was a fine film. It's just the hype of... the writing was bad and everything. It was Zack Snyder-y, and I don't like that. Anyway, I could go on and on and on.
But I don't think.
But
I think Thor was worse.
No, I don't think Wonder Woman is a good film. Yeah, I love the experience. That was the same experience. That was a similar experience. I was watching it with my mom, and the women in that theater were crazy too, because they've never seen a superhero that was the main the main character that
it's
on
like,
screen
other than
live
that,
action,
it's like Catwoman and like Black Widow, and you're like, I don't like the characters in the comics are great, but then on screen it's like they're like the sixth minor character in the movie, you know.
And and it was really about feminism and really turned everything around with looking at it from the female perspective, and making the woman, the girl in distress, or whatever you call it, damsel in distress.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, Black Panther was like that. It was crazy. So what was your first experience watching it?
I liked it. I thought it brought up a lot of really interesting sort of ambiguities and themes. Like, watching it, I was thinking a lot about like Malcolm X and sort of the dichotomy presented by media about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. And it seemed to me like there were a lot of elements of that kind of thing, you know, of isolationism versus, you know, generosity towards others, and inclusion being brought up in the film in a really interesting way, which I think we'll talk more about later.
Yeah.
But a lot of really complex issues that could not be resolved in any like complete way, which often is not the case in superhero movies. It's like we defeat the bad guy and then everything is good again. But I think the mark of a good movie is when, even when you do the best thing, something bad still happens because of it. You know what I mean? It's more complex.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I liked about the movie too. I don't think it's black and white. I think it's the characters are very gray. Mm-hmm. Especially T'Challa at the end. He doesn't want the enemy to die. He offers to save him. He also is not completely the good guy when he's king of Wakanda, or he's about to be king, which is interesting.
And I mean, even Killmonger in the first like quarter of the movie, I was 100% with him, like agreeing with him. It was only when he sort of got to the whole like kill Black Panther and take over that I was like, maybe not. But the first half I was like, yes. I mean, I think he's completely right in thinking Wakanda should interfere, should not be isolationist.
But he still killed people before he got to Wakanda, which
he was working in Black Ops, right?
Yeah, but he was with Andy Serkis's character also, and stealing stuff.
Yes, yeah. But before you knew like about that stuff, I agreed with his ideology before I realized like,
Yeah, I get it.
It's too extreme.
Yeah, but they're all like gray in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
At least the T'Challa and Killmonger are really gray. Even the king, the dead king, is really gray. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk all about that on this podcast. We'll even link it to Thor because it's a two-parter. So this is part 2. So yeah. Before we go any deeper, we'll talk about Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Shakespeare. Over 180 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And for you, the listeners of the How to Get Away with Shakespeare podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. All free! What have you been listening to, Jane?
I've been re-listening to Neil Gaiman's short story collection.
Oh, is that the guy that wrote Norse mythology thing?
Yeah, and he wrote American Gods, and he co-wrote Good Omens, all of which are very good, but this is his, it's all his own short stories.
Is he a good writer?
Yes, yeah, I really enjoy him. You know, he bends sort of all elements of fantasy, supernatural, horror. It's all mixed in. It's not just realism. It's very weird and twisted, and trigger warning especially so. You can tell by the title. He sort of calls it his book of things that should have a trigger warning on it.
Have you read Norse mythology?
I haven't, but I'll read it after James does.
Do you know if Loki and Thor are in there?
I'm 100% sure that Loki and Thor are in there. Probably Hela too, and Odin, and Fenrir, and Sleipnir. I don't know, all the good people.
Cool. That ties into our podcast. Thank you. So, how can the listeners get those books for free?
To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Shakespeare. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Shakespeare for your free audiobook. Thank you very much to Audible for sponsoring this podcast.
We love you. All right, we're back, and we're going more in depth with Black Panther. Should we first discuss how similar to Thor Black Panther is? Because I feel that's going to help us go into what's taken from Shakespeare there, or how similar Shakespeare is in Black Panther and Thor.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. What do you think?
Well, they're both, I don't know, they're both royalty, which is funny. I hesitated because I was like, Thor is a god, but Black Panther is not a god. I was like, no, they're both royalty, and they're both. It's both a story about who's gonna go on the throne.
Exactly.
Who's gonna get on the throne?
How to be kings.
But I feel like we've discussed on last episode that Thor was. The film Thor was all for Thor to be worthy for the throne. And I feel Black Panther is that too. I feel that T'Challa thinks he's worthy, and he certainly proves that he's worthy when he fights the first man in the beginning during the ritual or the ceremony or whatever they call it. But then he learns a lot about his past, and he learns a lot about who he really is, who his father really was, and he now makes his own decisions, and I think he's more worthy by the end. It's not the same as Thor, but it's kind of a similar journey.
Yeah, I was thinking it's almost like a coming of age story, because he sort of goes to take the throne, and then it's a story of him learning more about his family's past, how things are sort of deeper and more complex than at first they seemed. You just hear from inside the country and inside your family, this very specific story, and then you go out and interact with other people and find out that there are so many different experiences to be had and views of, of royalty and of your country. So it seems to me I don't know if Black Panther seems as much about worthiness as Thor did, but I agree it's still definitely at point. But I don't think he has as dramatic a change in goal as Thor does.
Right.
I don't think he tries to sacrifice himself, really. You know what I mean? It's more about finding that he can fail, and then failing and growing from that.
Yeah, I'll give you my reasons when it comes to Shakespeare, I think later on. But, because I have some points that are very similar to Thor in there. So let's just talk about Yeah, the Black Panther and Shakespeare. So what's similar? I guess we can start with royalty is a lot in Shakespeare. It's really present in Shakespeare. But especially what's so similar to Shakespeare in this film is the story of Killmonger.
Yes, absolutely.
And the story of his father. And it's very Hamlet.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. I mean, if you were to watch the film from Killmonger's perspective, it would kind of be like watching Hamlet, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
With the exception of like the stepfather sleeping with his mom. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, you can definitely see how it is framed that way. Like, he killed my father and now I'm going to get revenge on his family.
Right. So T'Challa's father killed Killmonger's father, and now Killmonger is seeking revenge. Is revenge the place on the throne? I guess.
Well, it's also, I think, dialing back their isolationist policies and spreading Wakanda's sort of riches and intellectual advancements to the rest of the world. I think that's the greatest revenge, because that's what his father wanted to do.
Does he want to do that? Or yeah, for sure he wants to open Wakanda to the world, but I think he wants to do it in a Hitler kind of way. He wanted
to share the weapons first thing, yeah.
Yeah, he thinks he's the superior species. Wakanda is a superior species, and they're gonna take they're gonna bring destruction or bring their wrath to the world.
Does he think that they're a superior species, or does he think that they have so many advancements that they have to share? It's that he wants to give weapons to the people who never had them before, oppressed people, and through weapons empower them to change their own lives and no longer be conquered. Now, if giving people weapons is the best way to do that is perhaps up to debate. That's part of the problem of what he's saying. But I don't think he's saying that he wants to rule the world. It's that he wants those who were oppressed to be in power.
Yeah, but he still wants the world to think that they're like Wakanda's are gods, because he says, we'll come out on top this time. So.
Yeah, I think he wants to show people like Wakanda, because that's their whole story, right? That they're, they keep calling themselves a third world country, and then all of a sudden they want to say, you were wrong about us. We are not what you thought we were, what you assumed we were. And I think it's sort of a, you can imagine that moment like showing everyone what the world is, which is what happens at the end of the movie.
Right. So that's his revenge, I guess. Yeah. Because I was like, yeah, I was asking myself, what's his revenge? He doesn't want to get the murderer of his father, because the murderer of his father is dead, like Hamlet wanted with Claudius.
Right.
And the murderer of his father is not sleeping with his mother either, which is not Hamlet-like. But it still takes the themes and expands them and looks at them in a new way, I think.
I mean, if we think about it, it's sort of like a more symbolic view, like, so his country is America, but it's African people in America.
Right.
Who were oppressed. And we can sort of think about the Wakandans who aren't helping as, in a way, sleeping with the mother country, America. It's sort of that betrayal, because they're still,
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Because it's still sort of the same thing happening.
Right.
It's that everyone's forgotten about his father, or,
Yeah. That he was actually Wakandan.
Yeah.
And that he's actually the heir to the throne.
Exactly. Or that he has a claim anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Cool. And sort of like Hamlet is in the he's forgotten basically in the play. He's yeah. Everybody doesn't care about his father's death, really. Which is very, very similar.
And even at some points, the father's ghost shows up like and just walks across Hamlet's vision and is like, "Don't forget about me," because he's so worried that Hamlet will forget about him too. You know.
But there are also ghosts in Black Panther, which is very similar to Hamlet too, because isn't Killmonger's father talking to him? Yeah, when Killmonger becomes the Black Panther, he sees his father, and yeah, it was kind of the same.
The whole thing with the ancestral tree with the Panthers, we talked about this when we talked about Hamlet and the Lion King, which is sort of similar imagery, like with the tree and like all
yeah. Also, speaking of fathers and ghosts, they're like Hamlet. T'Challa gets closer to his father. Even Killmonger, who's supposed to be the Hamlet in this story, gets closer to his father. They both get close to their father. Like Thor also gets closer to Odin throughout his journey. And yeah, it's very similar to what Shakespeare does with his play. Any thoughts about that?
I guess I'm wondering, do they get more similar to their fathers, or is it more about becoming more of themselves? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think part of the struggle here is that they're trying to
understand themselves, perhaps?
Or struggle between just, following the father's traditions and moving on to their own sort of, I mean, at the end we see that he ultimately chooses to not follow the Wakandan policy of, isolationism. He goes off on his own path.
Yeah, and I think Hamlet is a lot like that too. I think it's also an identity quest.
Yeah.
So Thor is very much an identity quest, and Black Panther is very much an identity quest. So I think that's very similar for both them and for Hamlet too, and that's very Shakespearean because Shakespeare loves. It's not just he killed my father, blah blah blah. Let's kill him back. It's more like a deeper journey that we're going to, and yeah, it's not that basic. It's more like you have to go very. I don't know how to explain it, but it's deep. It's there's a depth to it.
Yeah, there's definitely that The thing I liked about it was that first there was the internal conflict in this story, which is when T'Chaka decides to kill, is it Njobu?
Yeah.
So that's an internal conflict, He's deciding, do I kill him or not,
Mm-hmm.
He is my brother. But then we also have sort of a contained external conflict, which is sort of the stuff within Wakanda. So there's the Jabari people who want to take over the throne. And then from there, once we've resolved that, we move on to the external conflict, which is sort of Wakanda and the whole world.
Right.
So we have sort of these three different levels. And I think having those three different ones is especially external versus internal. I mean, you need both of those to be a Shakespearean story. You need so much internal conflict, as we know from Hamlet and Lear and Macbeth.
Oh, yeah.
But you also need the actual stuff happening in the plot.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, since you mentioned Macbeth, there's a struggle also with Killmonger by the end of the film, which he kind of there are remorse, and there are this Macbethy, I don't know, struggle by the end that he doesn't know if he did the right thing. He doesn't go insane, but he's about to, and it's kind of weird, a weird comparison, I think.
Right, and I mean, from his point of view, T'Challa coming back must be sort of like when Banquo's ghost appears at the banquet, and he's
exactly.
like,
Good. Oh yeah, that's very Macbeth. Yes, yeah. There we go.
But then he actually is back. But at first, when it
killing the king, yeah,
seems,
good,
yeah.
Good, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Good. That's why I have you on the podcast to help me out. I knew there was something there. There are also exiles. Like, when we talk about Killmonger killing the king, he's also exiling him, in a way. And that's very Shakespearean, too.
I mean, the family does literally go into exile. It's sort of like, actually, is it Macduff's family in Macbeth, who, he leaves his wife and his kids behind, which is sort of like what happens because after T'Challa is supposedly killed, T'Challa's mother and Shuri run off to the Jabari kingdom. So it's sort of like a parallel there, like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they find out that he's alive, and luckily they do not suffer the same fate as the Macduff family.
Right. So that's another Shakespeare theme. Now, we've talked about, for Thor, this thing that he learns in the green world, which is to be selfless, to become selfless, I think. And the green world in that movie is Earth. What is the green world in this movie? Is the green world when T'Challa is supposedly dead, and he goes into the snow mountains and whatever? Is that the green world? Is that yeah, what's the dynamic there?
Is it a green world? I don't know. I mean, what other elements does it have? Do you want to explain further?
Well, it does have a change of power. Like, T'Challa doesn't have his powers anymore, and he's not king anymore. And there's another, like the fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream. They are the people in power in the forest. So there's another power there. So yeah, it's kind of a green world like situation. And I think also what makes it a green world is that T'Challa comes out of it and he has learned something. He has changed. He has made a new friend, and yeah.
It's true, but I mean, I guess he makes the friend there, but the only reason they rescue him is sort of to make equal, he didn't kill their leader, M'Baku. So, I mean, in some way they felt indebted and they've paid back the debt. But then they do decide, to support him.
Yeah, I thought that was very similar to when Thor goes into the green world. He has no powers either.
That's true. Similar to Thor, yeah.
And, he kind of learns to be... like in the beginning, M'Baku and T'Challa want nothing to do with each other, right. And now T'Challa has to learn to accept help from the outside, and M'Baku has to accept that he shouldn't be alone, and he should help his people, which is Wakanda, and.
But also I think it's sort of it's a microcosm of Wakanda's problem. I think probably T'Challa comes out of that realizing, oh, that's what I've been doing to other people all along. Because we have this country that is sort of, they don't want to be even associated with Wakanda. They want to be sort of off in the mountains, anti-technology, like by themselves, small group. And then they take pity on him and rescue him. And sort of like he does with Everett K. Ross, they heal him. And then ultimately, I think he comes to realize that if they hadn't helped him, he would be dead. And so I think it causes him to reflect on what Wakanda has been doing by ignoring the plight of black people across the world.
Right. Yeah. But do you see other places that are green world-like in the movie where there's a change of power?
Yeah, I would argue that, the place sort of on the mountain by the waterfall that they go
do the ritual.
To do the ritual and,
where
sort of
they
duel,
take away the powers, yeah.
Because, it's sort of Midsummer Night's Dreamy because they take the magic flower before and after to, in this case, it's to give themselves, the Black Panther, powers or to take them away. In Midsummer Night's Dream, it's to give you the power of love, even if it's compelled, irresistible, relentless love, or take it away. It's sort of like the idea that you can just put something in your physical body and your mind and your heart will match it. I think that's similar.
Yeah. I also think when he goes into the real world, yeah, sure, he does have his Black Panther power and everything, but he's still unknown to the world. He's not king of the world. He's king of Wakanda, which is a change in powers again. And it's still green world like, even though Black Panther is stronger than everybody else in this world too.
Because they don't know. They think Wakanda's, like they said, a third world country.
Yeah. So, I would argue that the real world, or quote unquote the Earth, the rest of the Earth, is also a green world in this movie. Now, I wanted to ask you, because I like asking you questions.
I know.
That's my favorite thing on this podcast. Loki and Killmonger. What do you think of? Are they similar? Is Killmonger Iago-like, or is Killmonger somebody else?
I think he could be Iago-like, but I don't know. I feel like he's a much more honest character. I don't feel like he's trying to manipulate people. I feel like he is very smart and very strategic, but he's not trying to sneak around people and convince them to do what he wants. He's being very open the whole time about what he's there for, except with the moment of reveal at the beginning where he reveals, that he is, he has a claim to the throne, that he's from Wakanda when he shows, the words on his bottom lip. But other than that, I really don't see him being like a liar or mischievous, but perhaps that's what we would have seen if he had a normal childhood without the loss of his father. That can affect you in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But I think also he's similar to Loki, specifically Killmonger, because they both won the throne, and they're both outsiders in a way, and they're kind of similar in that way. But I don't think specifically that Killmonger is a Iago. I don't think he's he's planning 30 steps ahead like Loki or Iago. But yeah, and when you told me about you said your answer, I was thinking also Killmonger uses a lot of disguise in the beginning, and that's very Shakespearean too. Like the outsider, it reminds me of not Midsummer Night's Dream, but The Winter's Tale, with Perdita being like a foreigner and an outsider, but she's actually deserves the throne because Leontes is her father. And there's a lot of that in Shakespeare. People who aren't actually what they're thought to be.
Right. And we see too when they go to, what is it, like the casino where Everett Ross is, where they eventually when they're going to try to run into Ulysses Clow for the first time. They're all in disguise, right? Like the member of the Dora Milaje is wearing a wig that she then throws at someone, which is like the best moment in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's very much, like disguising your true identity is something that happens constantly in Shakespeare from, what's his name? Edward, not Ed, whatever the other Edward Wynne is.
Or in As You Like It.
Yeah. Like King Lear, Tom the Fool, As You Like It.
Cymbeline, too.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another thing, I guess. Disguise the power of, just you're not who you're thought to be. And that's also ties into identity a little bit.
Right.
Which is, I think, very similar here.
I mean,
and
especially
that's
in a film.
Thor, too. That relates to Thor, too.
But it's interesting because no one can pretend to be Wakandan. Because all they would have to do is say, well, show us, the special marking.
Yeah.
So it's always people pretending to be, if we want to consider the rest of Earth like the pastoral,
Right.
It's never the opposite way. It's never someone pretending to belong to the court.
But I was saying Thor because he also loses his power, and they think he's just crazy when he's human. Oh, I'm Thor, the Norse god, and I want to go back to Asgard. So yeah, that kind of ties in a way. You're not who you pretend to be, but he's not trying to disguise himself, or he's not. He's actually saying, "Oh, I'm actually more than I am."
Right.
Yeah. Also, something I saw, I was thinking about today, was Wakanda and the island in the Tempest, which is cut off from the world, which was an interesting comparison.
I guess the difference would be there. I do agree with what you're saying, but then, of course, we have Prospero, who comes in immediately, is that colonizing influence. And, I guess who would be that in Black
Killmonger
Panther?
a little bit, I guess.
Is he a colonizing
I don't
influence?
know. But,
he's definitely trying to open the island up to the rest of the world.
But he wants to be on top. And that reminds me a lot of the British and the way they wanted to get everybody.
He wants to do that in order to empower the oppressed and the subjugated.
Oh, let's help the poor African. Let's give them education and Christianity, and he wants to do that. Well, Killmonger with weapons
But I don't think he wants to. The difference would be that colonizers want to rule that country. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants to, that's why he sends off weapons. He sends them off in unarmed planes, essentially.
Yeah.
He doesn't send people with them to enforce law and teach people how to use the weapons.
Not yet.
Maybe he had a larger plan for once the riots are over. I don't know, but it seems to me like he doesn't have that interest in controlling people.
I don't know. I see him as a colonizer. I see him as someone that wants to be on top and wants to impose his laws and his regime upon the world.
I think he wants to impose his moral and ethic standards upon the Wakandans, who live a very different lifestyle. He goes there from the U.S., which also, is very similar in its isolationist policies, but then it eventually stopped being so isolationist, so there's a parallel there. But he goes to Wakanda from America, despite his lineage, so he's not familiar with the culture there. So he is sort of imposing himself on them.
Oh, and that ties into Prospero, what he does with Caliban.
Yeah.
It was my island, something that Caliban says, or something like that.
Yeah, he was going to people it with little Calibans.
And Prospero is an outsider, and not in the play, because now he rules the island, and he's the colonizer, and he's the...
But one of the very first things we learn Prospero does is ingratiate himself with Caliban, and I think just Caliban, actually. He gets him to show him all the best spots on the island, where to get food, where to get water. And what we see Killmonger do is immediately bring them someone they desperately wanted killed. He brings them the body of Ulysses Clow, and he gets that sort of that clout pun with them. You know, he immediately brings them something that they wanted, and so he wins favor.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's weird. I always get super prepared for this podcast, but we always during my discussion with Shane, I always find something new that I never thought of, and that's something.
Well, I said that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm kidding.
But it's so interesting because you think you've thought of everything when you prepared, but then, that's why I like having these conversations.
This is why conversation is important, because you can think about everything in your own head, like, to death, but eventually, you know, someone else is going to say, what about this? And you're going to go like, why didn't I think of that 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, we'll end the podcast like we ended the other episode, which we're going to talk about Shakespeare and romance. What about the love with Nakia? Is this a Shakespeare and romance? Because we talked about Jane and Thor last week. So, what is this? Oh, I also want to talk about the women.
Yes. I really like Nakia's character, that she was just off doing her own thing, like, you know, rescuing girls and women, like, off in Nigeria. I thought that was great. And then it made sense that he wanted her to be there for his coronation, but also, I mean, I didn't really feel like there needed to be a romance in the story. I guess I'm just not a very romantic person, but...
And it's also Hollywood. That was a romance there.
And it's Lupita Nyong'o, but like... Yeah.
But I think... I didn't see a Shakespearean romance. I just wanted to know if you saw one. I was thinking more about the women and how different from Shakespeare the women are in this in this film. Yeah. They're so freaking badass, like fighters, all of them, which you don't see a lot in Shakespeare, and you don't see a lot in Thor. We saw Sif, Lady Sif, but she was there like 2 seconds. Right. The women own their own in this movie, which is of the time of 2018.
It's true.
But it was nice to see, when analyzing Shakespeare, to see a difference there between his women and the women in Black Panther.
Right, and a large part of that could be because it's not... I mean, a large part of it is not derived from European sort of myths and stories. Right. It's a lot of African folklore. Yeah.
But I think that shows an evolution also in the way people think of women now, as opposed to how they thought of women in Shakespeare's time and for a long time. I mean, Shakespeare, I gotta argue, he was a great fighter for a woman in his time. Even though they were still at the bottom of the cast list, you could write many, and I've written many essays on this, that Shakespeare is a great fighter for women. But I think Ryan Coogler is really a good fighter for women too. It was great to see a change there.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of the all-female, you know, sort
they're
of
not the side character.
The king.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, exactly. Usually, I mean, I can imagine this with another movie. Like, it would be the two men against each other. They're like, you know, 90% of the movie, and then like 10% is like other side characters. Half of that is women.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how I feel when watching a lot of movies. And that doesn't mean it's a bad movie, but a lot of the time it's like, okay, well, here's the 2 seconds of the female character reacting.
Yeah, you know? And they're not the damsel in distress, and Nikia is also not just the romantic. She doesn't serve the romantic. She serves it, but there's more to her than just serving the romantic place older.
Right.
Which is great, I think.
And she doesn't get injured and need to be rescued. She actually goes on the mission with them, to is it South Korea? Yeah, it's Busan.
Yeah, she doesn't stay back.
Right.
Which is great. So yeah, there's a change in women. It was just interesting to think about Shakespeare's women and this story, this movie. Yeah. All right. So, anything else you want to say before we go to our quote?
I don't think so. Good movie.
Yeah, go watch it if you haven't watched it. And then watch Avengers Infinity War, because although Chadwick Boseman said that it was... he insisted that at a press conference that Avengers Infinity War was not Black Panther 1.5. It is.
I haven't seen it, so...
There's a lot of Black Panther in there. There are a huge part of the movie. But I agree. I kind of agree with him in a way. Okay. So, the quote for the week, I picked it because I think, as we talked about, there's a lot of similarities between Thor's quest and Black Panther's quest. They're both asking that question that I'm going to read in their movies, whether it is unconsciously or consciously. The two movies are about the heroes finding out who they really are and what defines them. Do their fathers define them? Does T'Challa want to be like his father? Or, in the case of Thor, is he really that selfish? And yeah, is he gonna let his selfishness define him, or is he gonna reveal who he really is? Which is more than that. So they both go on identity quest, and I think this quote speaks to that from King Lear. Who is it that can tell me who I am? That's my quote. Any thoughts on that?
It's an interesting choice of words in the quote. Who is it that can tell me? Because it should be, who is it who can tell me? Shakespeare, know your grammar. But I think it's intentional.
But, King Lear is in a way asking the universe to tell him who he really is, or the people in front of him. But I think Black Panther and Thor are asking that too, unconsciously, to the universe. Who is it, or what can tell me who I am? Can you tell me who I am?
But of course, no one can tell someone who anyone is. So.
But they discover it, which they get the answers.
Yeah, but of course you have to discover it yourself.
Yeah.
But it's a you that you haven't met. So in some way, it's not that you. It's you have to evolve as a person before you can find out.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, there's no one who can tell you.
But yeah, the universe takes its time to tell you things sometimes. Yeah. We've all seen that happening in our own lives.
God.
And it's still happening. Okay, so this is where we leave you for season 1.
End of season 1.
End of season 1 of this podcast. 10 episodes. Woohoo! So yeah, follow us and message us, and yeah, tell us what we can do for season 2.
Send me all your craziest Harry Potter theories about Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I will actually read all of those.
Fan fiction between Malfoy and Harry Potter.
Okay.
How to get away with Shakespeare.
Attacks.
How to get away with Shakespeare at gmail.com if you want to send those.
Or you can message us on
I'll
Twitter.
transfer them to Jane. And you can message us on Twitter at...
Jane the Fox.
And at... I am... no, it's Vega Gabe, sorry. Yeah, I'm so confused. But you can also follow my Instagram. I am Gabriel Vega.
Mine is also Jane the Fox, so... I'm not that difficult to find. Someone else has made it difficult.
Yeah, bye!
If you liked this podcast and want more, go on iTunes and search for How to Get Away with Shakespeare. We're also on SoundCloud, Spreaker.com, and YouTube. Again, thank you very much for listening.
Cheerio.